Hi everyone, I'm glad you could join me for today's bake along, which is a savory yeast bun. It is a soft, squishy ricotta, onion, and dill bun. You are going to want to stick around for this full recipe because I'm going to give you the inside scoop behind making a dairy-rich yeast dough, how to really properly shape your buns so they're a beautiful size, and add some terrific flavors along the way. So stay with me while we bake ricotta onion dill buns. All right, to start off this recipe, I need to cook the onions that go into the bun. I just need to sweat them out and soften them. So I'll get my saute pan going. I have just a tablespoon of oil to add to that. And you can just use a regular cooking onion, peel it, dice it up, just a normal dice, not too large, not too small. And I'll cook these out over medium heat. I'll let them get warmed up. I don't want them to take on any color, but what's very important when you're cooking your onions is to let all the steam, the moisture from the onions to evaporate. And that's what sweating means when it comes to cooking your onions. The reason you do this, especially for this recipe, is if I were to add raw onions to the bun, when the buns bake, well, all that steam would come out and push little holes around the onion pieces. So you'd have sort of gummy gaps inside your lovely, delicious buns. That's not the look we're after, or the texture either. So over medium heat, this takes about 5 to 7 minutes. There we go, the onions are ready. And you can work with them warm. So just set them off to the side while you get your dough ready, and they can be the last thing you add. Don't be like me and forget to add them until the dough is mixing. So let's see if I remember. Now this is a lovely, soft, enriched dough. So it has egg and it has dairy in the form of ricotta cheese. The first thing I'll do is add my flour to the mixing bowl. And I give you the choice in this recipe. You can use bread flour if you want, but you don't have to. You can use all-purpose as well. In my case, I actually used a 50-50 mix. And I'll combine all my dry ingredients, including just a little bit of sugar for sweetness, my instant dry yeast, which doesn't need dissolving in liquid, so I can add it right in with the dry ingredients. I have my salt, 2 teaspoons. I've got a tablespoon of chopped fresh dill. Oh, I love dill in springtime recipes, and that's when I tend to make these buns most often. If you want to use dried dill, use a teaspoon and a half, because of course being dried, it's compressed and concentrated in flavor, and it'll rehydrate it in the dough itself. I'll give this a quick little mix. I will be using the dough hook. There. And now for the wet ingredients, I have a cup of warm water. So just above body temperature is ideal, especially because you're probably pulling your ricotta cheese right from the fridge. If you can think about it, you can warm up your eggs in the shell in a bowl covered with hot tap water just to bring them up to room temperature. It just helps take some of the time, the proofing time, off the first rise of the buns when everything is nicely warmed. So in go the eggs, some olive oil for flavor. And the final ingredient to add is the ricotta cheese. Now this is creamy ricotta cheese, the kind you buy in the tub, not the dry packed wrapped in paper. You could use baker's cheese if you want, or farmer's cheese, which has that coarse texture. Actually, I remember this recipe is inspired by a cottage cheese bun my mom used to make, or I remember having it as a kid. But using ricotta cheese is easy to do. If you wanted to use cottage cheese, of course you can, but that measurement of salt, I call for 2 teaspoons of salt in this recipe, reduce that to 1.5 teaspoons because cottage cheese has salt added to it, where ricotta is unsalted and has a nice sweet taste. So that goes in. And now we just mix until the dough comes together. It is a softer, stickier dough, but as it sits and rises, it absorbs some of the moisture. So don't be tempted to add extra flour. What did I say about forgetting to add the onions? Oof, I did. It's because they were behind me, not in front of me. The dough is only partially mixed, so I can add the onions. You've probably already written a comment below about 30 seconds ago going, Anna, you forgot the onions. That looks better. There you go. You can see what I mean. It is rather a sticky dough, but that's part of the recipe. So I've just got a little flour on my hands as I pull the dough off the hook. And I'll transfer this to my bowl so it has time to rise. Now, did you know that doughs with a significant amount of dairy ingredients take longer to rise than those made, say, with just water? You want to give this time. So it takes about 90 minutes for this dough to rise, and it may not, you're not going to see it lift up and double in size. Give it the 90 minutes and you know you're good. I can smell the dill and the onion. I'm just going to wipe off my hands. Set this aside, give a little tidy up, and I'll see you in 90. I'm back. Here's the dough after 90 minutes. And I'm going to flour my work area. You can work on a cutting board if you want, or just a clean, level surface. And you can see that over time, that dough has absorbed a fair bit of its moisture. So it is easier to handle when floured. This recipe makes 12 buns. So first I'll divide it into 4 pieces and then cut each quarter into 3 individual bun pieces. If you'd rather, you can weigh out the dough. The weight of the dough as a whole may vary depending on the size of your onion primarily, but I find each of these pieces weighs in at around 350, 370 grams. Felt a little small. There we go. You can bake these individually on a baking tray, or if you want them cozied up together, a 9x13 pan is ideal. Give it a good grease. And then, actually, let me put that over here. I need a little space to roll my buns. And without too much flour now on your work surface, you want to shape the bun into a round so that it has almost a taut surface to it. And you know what? I'm gonna grab just a little bit. Oh, you know what? I have a damp towel. That'll work fine. I actually need the bun to catch on the bottom a little bit. So as I'm shaping the bun and twisting it, the outside surface of the bun is pulling and tucking in underneath. So that way you have a nice smooth top, and it really doesn't matter what the bottom of the bun looks like. So tucking it in, and then there. So to show that move in a little more slow motion, when you have to do multiple batches of this recipe, you get the hang of shaping buns. So you shape first, and then with one hand what I do is switch. So I'm mostly using the heel of my hand to pull and tuck that outer surface of the bun. I'll shape them all first, and then I'll put the rest in my pan. Tidy up that one a little bit. All right, and then I'll line them up 3 by 4. And now it's time for the second rise, which is half the first time. So 90 minutes for the first rise, now 45 minutes. And you want to cover these with a tea towel, let them sit. A delicious bun does take a little bit of patience. All right, these are ready for the oven. Now, they haven't doubled in size, but they have rested the 45 minutes. That is what counts. When you've got a dairy-rich dough, it's actually very forgiving. A little underproofed, little past its time is not going to compromise the end result. Now, to give these buns a nice little shine, I've got a whole egg mixed with a tablespoon of water. We'll just brush the tops. You want to make sure your oven is preheated to 350. Because of all that dairy and the egg in the dough, they do brown beautifully. If you wanted to, you could sprinkle a little something on top. All right, these take about 35 minutes to bake, and you will tell when they're done because they have an even golden brown to the top of them. After the buns come out of the oven, you want to give them a little time to cool, but don't they just look so inviting? Just waiting to be cut in half and made into a sandwich. They tear apart very, very easily. And because of the egg and the dairy, they do stay fresh for a couple of days, which is very, very nice. And they freeze fantastically well. Oh, how beautiful. And you know, that onion, it was kind of sharp in the beginning when it was raw, but now cooked down in the pan and then cooked down again with the ricotta cheese and the dill. This is just such a lovely springtime bun recipe. I do hope you'll give it a try. Let me know if you make any changes. Do you add garlic? Do you add sun-dried tomato? olives? Do you skip the dill and use something else instead? I love to hear from you. Of course, you know the full recipe is below on the descriptor window. Just hit the ... more and it opens up into the complete recipe. It's been fantastic baking with you today. I'll see you again for another delicious bake along. Did I tell you these are still warm? That ricotta cheese, while you don't see the texture in there, you can tell what it adds. It gives the bun such substance. And the dill and onion just settle in there. You don't even need butter on it.